Welcome everybody to the fifth episode of Think What You Will podcast with myself, Rodrigo Pontes, and my friend and co-host Jason Suarez.
Thanks. And we officially ended on our last episode 1 month of this podcast. And I think it's quite a significant achievement for us.
Yes,
And we're
sir.
very proud of it. And, it was a lot of work before that too. But now we're in our fifth episode. We got our fifth topic. And today we're talking about romantic relationships.
So to dive right into romantic relationships, Jason, I would like to start off with a question. How
Okay.
meaningful is a relationship to you in your personal life?
Wow, that's like you're basically jumping in the deep end. How meaningful is it to me?
Yes.
Well, I think it's one of the big factors in life, right? I think it's one like your long term goals in life is being in a successful relationship, right? With somebody that you love and trust and things. It's one of the pillars of life for me. Um, so I would say it's quite important. But what about you?
I would say it depends on the person I'm with because I feel like for me a romantic relationship is if I'm with someone that we're like working towards building something together, it's going to be really meaningful to me. But if I'm with someone that is just with me to have fun and then that's it, then it's not going to be very meaningful.
Right. Are you thinking of anything specific in your, past experience?
Well, I've only really had one like meaningful relationship to me, and I can say that that person became like really really important in my life. So I would say that for me to be involved romantically with someone, they will be like from my perspective they will become like really important to me and they will be a part of my daily life. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Now, I think what would be an interesting question for this is like, you're saying, right? How meaningful is it to us? And you said, oh, it depends on the person, right? In this specific case, that person was special to you. Now, here's my
Yes,
question. What made that person special to you? What made that relationship special to you?
I guess when you start off at first, you're always in that you're in that like lovey-dovey phase with your partner, but I feel like they start to become more important to you when you get past that phase and you start facing some difficulties and struggles together, and you know that you're not alone. You're doing it with someone else, and you're both in it together for and aim to be together for a long time. And if both have that goal, then they become really important to each other.
Yeah. But here's the thing, right? Like when you first meet somebody, you first start dating somebody, it's impossible to know them perfectly, right? Like you
Yeah.
never know who they are deep down inside. They could be, a completely different person that you'd only discover after, for example, a year of dating them, right? Now, the thing is like, how can you distinguish, like in your case you were talking about, having, that lovey-dovey phase, right? Well, how do you distinguish from having like genuine feelings for somebody and like just being infatuated with them, for example?
With time, well, for sure. With time, the more time you spend with them and the more time passes, the more time you're together, the more you see whether it's just infatuation, because at some point infatuation dies off
Hmm.
and stops being prominent. But if you guys truly care and love each other, that love and care will be there, and it will grow over time. It grows more and more. It doesn't like grow less, and it doesn't become less. If it becomes less, then it's not meaningful. But if it keeps growing and growing as time passes, then you know that you're both becoming very significant and more super meaningful to each other. How about you? But how do you interpret this?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it's like you said, time, right? But it's also the things that you experience with time, right? Because you can spend a lot of time with somebody and it not be, significant, valuable time that really has an impact. I think one or certain other things that can define that kind of time that makes you, understand whether it's infatuation or
Yeah.
true feelings is like the hardships you go through, disagreements, right? That's why they say in relationships you have to fight sometimes, right? Because you never fight, you never know how you react, for example, in like bad situations or situations where you're not on good terms with your partner, for example.
Yeah, when challenges arise and you got to face them, if I feel like if the partners turn against each other is really not a good thing. It's not a good thing. But if both partners be like, okay, this is the challenge we're facing them, we're gonna get through it together. By facing it together, we'll get through it. Then like they not only discover more about each other, but
Hmm.
they will discover more about how the relationship is and how meaningful it is to them.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I think those disagreements are natural for everybody, right? And I think it's important, for example, in relationships, being able to be criticized and have somebody tell you maybe in a certain situation you're wrong, right, and things like that, right? Now, here's a question: do you think, like, for example, in a good relationship, I think in a healthy relationship, you should be able to, see and correct your partner's flaws and also receive that criticism?
Yeah,
My personal opinion would be, I think a lot of people don't like that in relationships, and it's a reason for a lot of breakups. What do you think?
I think that no one is perfect. Everybody has their flaws, and it's up to the partners to whether accept the person and love the person for their good characteristics and for their flaws, or if they like don't like their flaws, if there's any way for them to help their partner correct those flaws and to improve upon them. So it's like kind of a teamwork where both of you are not perfect and both of you have flaws, and both of you have to work towards improving and becoming better towards each other, and you adapt more towards each other. But what's your take on it? Like, what's your perspective with it? Because we might have a different opinion here.
For sure, I agree with that. The word teamwork, I think teamwork is a good word, right? You're both working together to build something, right? I think you said in the last episode, you said that relationships are an investment, right?
Yeah,
It's an investment, obviously, your time, your patience, right? Your finances, right? A lot of other things too, right? Um, and that ability to communicate and criticize each other and accept criticism is really important, right? It's a work in progress for the both of you, and you both have to
yeah.
be willing to grow in it.
A lot of people cannot take criticism, so they would rather break it up than
Mm.
to accept that criticism and accept that they're not flawless, and they have to have the courage to be able to have their flaws pointed out to them and to work through them. And I don't think a lot of people have that. I think a lot of people would rather run away rather than facing adversity and facing their own flaws.
Mm. Have you have you ever had any experience with that?
Well, I mentioned before that I was only ever in one serious, meaningful relationship, and I can tell you that when it started, we kind of had a little bit of trouble when we point out each other's flaws. We kind of had a little bit of trouble accepting them and working through them. But as time went by and as more time we spent with each other, not only did our love grow, but we started accepting each other for our good characteristics and our flaws, and we started like to work together and to help each other to fix those flaws or to improve upon them. And I don't have a lot of experience when it comes to relationships. I'm a teenager. I don't. I haven't really had a lifetime of experiences with it, but from that experience, I can say that I have learned a lot of lessons with it. But how about you? You're currently dating someone, if I'm not wrong. So
Yeah.
now this is more of a relevant question to you because I'm not dating anyone right now, but you
Very,
are.
very.
So do you think that you guys have any problems when it comes out to pointing out each other's flaws and working through them?
I mean, I think everybody doesn't like to hear it, right? Like you said. But I don't know. For me, it's not that big of a deal. It's like kind of like, I mean, I know most of my flaws, but I also understand that some things you can't see yourself. You know what I mean? Like some
Yeah,
things it takes somebody else in a relationship with you to see, right? Because one thing is when you're living alone, you might not have those flaws, right? Maybe you're living alone, you don't have to take into consideration, for example, other people that you're living with, or
yeah,
you're spending time with, a lot of time with, especially because they're your partner, right? And certain problems will arise when you're with somebody, because obviously you have more like responsibility, right? You You have to take care of them. You have to treat them well, right? There's a lot more involved, and sometimes you need an external output or your partner telling you, you know, what you're doing wrong or what are your flaws. And I think that's kind of important.
But do you think that sometimes it's not really a flaw, but because your partner has this certain preference, it kind of makes it a flaw about you, but in reality, it's not really a flaw?
Well, I mean, that's tough because that is true, right? Like everybody has, what they want from a relationship, right? And if
Yeah.
you don't give that, maybe they'll be like, oh, that's a flaw, like you're saying, right? Oh, you're lacking this, or you're lacking that, or you do this that I don't like. And maybe from my perspective or from her perspective, she'll be like, oh, but that's normal for me, right? And that's where understanding comes in, right? You have to judge. There has to be a line where it's like, look, these are flaws, right? There's problems, right? Let's say, I don't know, I don't know what would be an example, for example, of a flaw in a couple or in a person in a relationship.
I would say if your partner has a habit of lying, it's a really
Okay,
big flaw.
fair enough. Like there's nothing to discuss, right? If you lie, you lie. That's a flaw. There's no
Yeah.
questions about it, right? Now, what would be like a gray line area? What would you think?
That's difficult. It's been a while, you know. I feel like a,
Area.
a gray line is more like something that both of you do, but maybe one doesn't like it that much, but they do it as well without realizing it. I cannot think of a specific characteristic right now, but something along those lines.
What if your partner had a really, let's take this because this is quite a common example. What if your partner had a really good, perfect, they had a really good friend or a friend of theirs that you
Yeah.
didn't like. Let's say you had a problem with them. Close friend, not a close friend. I don't. It doesn't really matter. Imagine they're a friend, right? If you have a problem with them, maybe something in your past, maybe you know the person from
Yeah.
before, they've done something to you or they've had some past relationship to you, right? And you let your partner know and you say, "Oh, I really don't appreciate you, spending time." Right? You're not going to disallow them. You can't really do that, right? Say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I really don't appreciate it," and they don't do anything about it.
Well, there's
What would
really
you
not
say?
much that you can do other than to tell your partner how you feel about it and how you like your thoughts about it. Because like for me, I don't. When I had a girlfriend, I didn't ban her from anything. Like I'm not that. I feel like everybody's their own individual and they're free to do what they want. But I would take into consideration if she didn't like a person that I would be hanging out with. It'd be like, okay, I gotta be maybe a little bit more distant to make sure that she's happy and she doesn't have a problem. And I would expect her to maybe do the same. Or if she's like, if maybe that friend was crappy to me and it's good to her, then maybe it's a good friend to her, So it's up to the partner, honestly, to determine whether or not it's like important for them to cut ties with them or to be more distance with them or to keep being close with them. It's I think it's up to the partner, honestly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What about this? Because we had the example of lying, right?
Yeah.
So let's put it in a gray area. Let's say,
White
um,
lies, we can say white
no,
lies are kind of a
not
gray
even
area.
that. Let's say I'm a person. I'm not very hypothetically, right? Let's say I'm a person who doesn't like to share a lot, and my
Hmm.
partner loves to share a lot, and like maybe they really want to hear everything, and I don't naturally share it, and they always think that I'm lying to them or like not telling them things when it's just like, no, that's just not my natural habit, and they accuse me for it. Is that my flaw, or do you think that that's just like an area where it's like, well, that's kind of who you are. You gotta accept that part of you.
I think that um it's not a lie per se because like for me as an example, I'm not a very open person at first. It takes a while for me to open up to someone, and I would be communicative about it with that person,
Hmm.
with the partner, because I would tell my partner, I'd be like, hey, look, I know that you share a lot and you open up to me a lot, but for me it takes time to open up about my things or to talk about my things, because I'm a person that likes to deal with my things head on by myself,
Yeah.
you know. And if she would feel like I was lying to her or that maybe I was hiding something from her, then I would just try to my best to reassure her and maybe little by little open up and talk about my things with her, slowly take that step to let her into my personal life, you know.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think I agree with that. I'm also that kind of person likes, resolving things on my own. Sometimes that means, not necessarily, my partner knowing about all my problems or like all the struggles, right? I think that's normal. Now, here's a question. What do you think about the idea? Well, what's your point of view on the idea of, you know, the grass is greener on the other side in relationships? For example, we're talking about flaws, right? It's easy to see your partner's flaws. And it's easy to think, oh, maybe like, this guy has a lot of flaws, or it looks like he has a lot of flaws, or this partner or this person, right? Maybe this other person wouldn't have so many flaws. The kind of the grass is greener on the other side philosophy or idea. What do you think of that? What's your point of view?
I think it's easier to criticize than to compliment someone. It's
Hmm.
so much easier to see somebody's flaws than to see somebody's good characteristics. So I feel like it's important in a relationship not only to communicate and talk about each other's flaws and how to improve them, but to also talk about each other's good qualities and to be thankful for them, because you got to look at both sides of the spectrum, you got to be positive. you, I feel like if two people go into a relationship being negative, it's not going to work out. But if two people go into a relationship being positive about it and being positive about their problems, their flaws, their good characteristics, and everything else, I feel like it has a bigger chance of working out long term than negative people, like a negative perspective.
Sure. Um, on that note, right? It's very easy, I think, for people to like, let's say, look around, right? Let's say, they're in a social environment where there's a lot of options, right? It's very easy to notice other people and think, oh, what would they, be like as my partner instead of the current one that I have, right? Um, how would you deal with that if that was you? Let's say like you were in a relationship, you were happy, but let's say you'd been in it for 7 years, hypothetically, and obviously naturally you start getting tired of things and bored and stuff, and you start looking at other people out there, right? And you're like, oh, this seems interesting, this seems fun, what would you do?
That's where loyalty comes in, If two people love each other, I feel like no matter how long, how much time has passed, even if other people seem more appealing to you in terms of characteristics or looks, you will know that you have somebody at home that you love and that you want to go spend your life with.
Hmm.
But I feel like after a certain amount of time, you start looking around and seeing other options. What other options are there, And you're like, okay, I have this amazing girlfriend, but it's not really working out or whatever. I think it's up to the person to decide whether they want to keep pursuing that or whether they just want to, be free to go pursue something else.
Yeah,
Because I feel like you only build your expectations or what you want out of a relationship the more experience you have with it. I'm not saying if you have several girlfriends at different periods of time you'll have more experience. I'm just saying maybe you dated this girl for 5 years and it didn't work out. You analyze, you're like, okay, why didn't it work out? What did I do wrong? What did she do wrong? What are the flaws? What can I get better at? Then you go into another relationship and it lasts 3 years and you're like, okay, whatever. And then you find the person you want to spend your life with, and you're like, oh, this is what I want. It's just experience about experience, to be honest.
hmm, loyalty, right? Loyalty and love, right? But you can cheat on somebody even though you love them, can't you?
The cheating topic.
Yeah, that's the worst one, right? No,
That
because you were talking about loyalty and love, right? You wouldn't leave the person. But that's the one of the things I find ironic is like people who cheat on their partner and then they're like, oh, they run back and they're like, I love you so much. How does that make sense? I'm not saying it does make sense or it's wrong or right, but how does that make sense? I have my own point of view, but I would like to hear yours.
My point of view on cheating is something that is avoidable. Is something that um, it just breaks somebody's heart, to be honest. But it depends. Like if a couple, let's say a couple's married and one of them cheats on the other,
Hmm.
but they have kids, and
Yep.
their partner finds out that the other one's cheating, and the other one's like, "I'm really sorry. Let's work through this," and proves everything to the other partner that they love them and that they just want them. It depends on a lot of aspects. But to be
Yeah.
honest, I'm not a big fan of cheating. I don't think it's morally correct, and
Of course. Of course.
I don't think it's morally correct. And maybe at some point in my life I'll do it. I don't know. I don't know what the future. No, I don't know what the future is. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
I will personally choose to cheat, but
No.
I do not know what goes through somebody's head to do that. I've never been in that situation, so I cannot really speak about it.
That's what I'm saying. That's the interesting part because people, because like I don't know either because I've never done it either. So it's kind of like weird. Like how do they how do they rationalize that in their heads, right? Like, oh, I love this person, but I went and cheated on them. Like,
It's a complicated topic, to be
yeah,
honest.
it's weird, right? It's
Yeah,
a pretty
it's weird.
complicated.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's complicated, but I guess like if somebody cheats on another, well, if you look, what it looks like is that the person that cheated doesn't want to be with their partner anymore. It's looking to pursue something else outside of that relationship. And then you have others that cheat but are still in love with their partner. I
Mhm.
don't know, man. It's a complicated topic.
Because like, what if like hypothetically, or we're talking hypothetical? Imagine you're in a partner, you're happy with that partner, but I don't know, maybe I don't know, maybe you're kind of fuckboy or something, and you get drunk, or you used to be a fuckboy, and you like get drunk at a party and you make out with that girl. Okay, one time mistake. You're drunk, you see a girl, you find her attractive because you're drunk, or whatever, and you do something small. We're not talking about like repetitive times, like one time, and then you go home and you're sorry, and you go to your partner and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, what is like what do you think about that? Like,
That's an interesting scenario.
yes,
But if
but
that
it's quite
happens,
common though. It's quite common though. You're not gonna lie.
like if that happens, then it's up to that person to make sure they can, never put themselves in that situation again
Yeah,
and prove to their partner how much they mean to them and how much they love them and that it was just a one-time mistake and that they really were drunk and they had no control over what was happening. Because when you're drunk, you really don't have control over yourself. And I personally do not drink. I choose not to drink. I'm not a big fan of alcohol, but I can say that I have experienced drunkenness once in my lifetime, and it's something that I was not a fan of because you lose control over yourself. You're not in complete control,
yeah,
and I hate that. I like to be in complete control of myself, and I feel like in this specific situation, this specific hypothetical scenario, then the person has to make sure they never put themselves in that situation again. Make sure to never drink that much again. You
yeah,
know, but it's also up to their partner to forgive them or not. You know, and that's where like the work has to be shown, the love has to be shown, everything has to be proved to the other partner.
yeah.
But I don't know. Well, how about you?
It's
What
definitely
do you think of?
it's a complicated situation, right? Like I feel like you have to draw a line, right? Like if someone cheats on you, no matter what they did, there's a line there. It's done, right? It's hard, right? Because like, what if you really love somebody, right? Like, you know, maybe if that happens when you're 16, it's fine, right? You're like, oh, I'll go meet somebody, in the next 10 years, my life will be fine. Imagine you're, I don't know, like a little bit older, maybe mid 20s, mid 30s, right? And generally finding partners, quality partners at that age is a lot harder, right? A lot of people are already settled down, and somebody does that to you, it's you're put to a harder decision because you're like, I don't have the same grounds that I had before.
Well, you did say that when you're like 16. I feel like when you're a teenager, maybe that mistake will happen. Um, not to everyone, but maybe I'm not going to say most people, I'm not going to generalize everybody, but I feel like a few have experienced that, and it has helped them realize that. It probably helped them realize that that's something that they never want to be put through again. That's something that they would never want to put themselves in that situation ever again.
Mhm.
So I feel like when you're a teenager, relationships are, I don't want to say experimental, but
Mhm.
they are for you to learn about what being in a relationship is like, feeling that first love, learning about what it is like to care and love somebody. And I feel like when you're a teenager, it's vital to make mistakes because that's how you learn, and it will help you not make mistakes when you're in a more mature relationship further down the line. You know.
I don't necessarily look at it that way. I think, sorry to disagree, but I think
Go
it's
ahead.
the wrong way of looking at it because yes, I get what you're saying, right? If you're younger, you date more, you gain more experience, right? But the reason maybe you mess up when you're younger is because you're not ready for relationships. I think there's way too many people nowadays who start dating. They start doing, physical, sexual things at way too young of an age, right? 12, 13, 14. People who are not ready for true relationships. Like if they're their friends and stuff, like having a really close, friend of the opposite sex or same sex or whatever, like that's okay, right? I think that's fine. Now like being in a relationship where it's that pressure, where it's that I don't know how to say, but like where you have certain responsibilities that you're not ready for at that age, you're pushing yourself against something that maybe you should, you know, let go for an older age.
I disagree with that. Like I have these two friends, and they're basically high school sweethearts. They're still together. They're still super in love. And honestly, I'm rooting for them to go all the way, like for the rest of their lives, because they're just so cute together. Sometimes maybe you meet your, I don't want to say, what's it called? Your sig. Wait, is
Your
it the
soulmate.
spe? Huh?
Your
What is it?
soulmate.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe you meet your soulmate in high school and you go through life with them for the rest of your life. But that's not the case for most people. And I'm really rooting for my friends there. Like they're just so cute together, and like they've had their fair share of issues, but they've always worked through them together. And I would say for myself, I have had good and bad experiences when it comes to kind of dating, and I think it's been a vital process of me becoming who I am today. It's it's made me grow a lot. It's made me learn a lot of lessons as well, and it has helped me understand what I want in a partner more and what I expect, and what the partner expects of me, how I should behave as well, you know. So I disagree with you on that.
No, but I agree perfectly with that. That's not what I'm disagreeing with. I'm saying that is perfectly fine. That's why I'm saying, sure, if you're at a young age and yes, you meet your soul partner, fine. But how do you know you're your soul partner, right? It's through time. And I feel like our generation rushes into relationships unnecessarily. Like two
No,
months
I
after
agree with that.
like 2 months after dating, you're like, oh, you want to be my girlfriend without knowing. I think if you're I'm not saying time is a judge because sure maybe you meet your soulmate in 2 months and whatever. I think that's kind of maybe what happened between me and my girlfriend. We met pretty quick and we started dating pretty quick and I hope it lasts a very long time. That's my hope. So I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying
I'm here for you if
you
it
have to
doesn't
have,
matter.
you have to have discernment, right? Like knowing, you know.
I agree with you in the aspect that our generation rushes and wants to be in a relationship like all the time, and it's not good for them.
Hmm.
Like for me, I personally am choosing like not to pursue anything like romantically with anyone for now, for the time being, because I want to take this time to work on myself, work on my dreams and goals. And, once I have kind of a better understanding and have grown more into the man I want to become and have worked and am closer to my dreams and goals, then I will be open to share this path with someone else. But until then, I feel like it's pointless to. Like I would say personally that if I get into a relationship right now, it's gonna be terrible because I don't have time and I don't have the attention span to be giving it to someone else right now. I'm so focused and I am doing so much that it would be pointless for me to. But I know people that jump into relationships like it's fucking like they're fishing, man. It's like getting one fish after the other. Like break up, next week have another girlfriend, or next week have another boyfriend. It's mental, man.
Exactly. I'll get to that really quick, but it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like you should like you spend the time, investing in yourself instead of investing in a relationship. And I think young people should do that more than dating because they're kind of like, oh, we should date. Spend that time, all those hours you spend every day, whether it's dates or whether it's the money you spend it on yourself. I think like all that time you can be investing doing something more. You know, like if you don't have time out of school to do other things, go practice sports or go learn a new language, go learn musical instruments or something new. Because when you're young, is the time to learn. That's the time you learn. That's the time you absorb the most information in your life. And if you clog that up with a lot of other things, and I'm not saying just saying relationships, right? It could be video games, like we talked in the
Yeah.
other episode, right? It could be anything. But relationships are one of those things. And on the point that you said about people constantly changing, that's exactly my point. Because they're at such a young age and without the experience and without the value of the relationship, they just jump in and out. So what happens overall as a society with that? There's, I would say, there's basically a devaluation of relationships because it's like I can get in and get out whatever I want. Hey, if I want to cheat, it's fine because cheating is normal now. No, I'm not saying me. I'm saying society, right?
Yeah, in general,
But like,
in a general
oh, I
basis.
cheat. Oh, whatever. Like, there's 100 kids that cheat in my city. Like, it's normal. Like, some person won't care anymore, and they'll date me anyways, right? There's just a devaluation of the relationships as a result of all this irresponsibility and all this uncarelessness or lack of care. Sorry, all this carelessness, regarding getting in, for example, relationships.
Right. We're talking about relationships, right? And the fact that a lot of people go around switching partners like they're playing roulette, um, it kind of brings me to a question where, like, can you describe for us? Can you talk about what was your first heartbreak like? Because I feel like with this kind of a hookup culture and cheating culture and everything, I feel like a lot of people's hearts get broken. So would you mind telling us about your first heartbreak? And
Whoa.
okay,
Um.
maybe not
Okay.
in depth,
No,
but
I
what
can.
lessons did you learn about from it?
What lessons that I learned?
Yeah,
Well, you know what the biggest lessons I learned was exactly what I'm telling you. That society doesn't value, for example, loyalty and things like that. I think that's the first lesson I learned. I don't think it was necessarily one person. I think it was over time, just general experiences in general. Right? Like I realized like it was very weird for somebody to even in the dating phase to be like loyal to somebody and stuff. And
yeah.
people would always be like, "Oh, that's kind of weird. Like, you got to be talking to 40 different girls at the same time and
They
trying
keep
with them."
their options open when they go they're
Exactly
dating.
the whole thing. And I was like, that's really weird and like whatever. I was young, I was naive, so I kind of learned from that and stuff. And sure, I guess society values that, so I found through that way of being, that kind of person, you eventually do attract more technically partners, right? Um, but I think that made me realize also like something. It was like, damn, if you find somebody who's not like everybody else in society, that's a keeper. So, I mean, from what I've learned through all those experiences, obviously a lot of little lessons, right? Is the most. I think that also another big lesson I've learned is just focusing on myself,
Yeah.
and then things will come to you. I feel like you're out there chasing relationships and like always trying to find those things. You're not going to be successful, but also it's not what you really want. I think you need to find what makes you happy in life, find what fulfills you in life, and then somebody else will want to come share that life with you. Because if you're not fulfilling your life, somebody's not going to fulfill it. Just them being there, you know, you're just going to make them miserable because you're going to be codependent on them, right? Like
Yeah.
I think, said last episode too, right?
Yeah,
And
we mentioned codependence as well. Yeah.
yeah, so finding who you are first, fulfilling yourself, finding your worth, and then like seeing who else you can consider, to come be your partner. And I think that I think that in the summary would be more or less what I learned overall. What about you?
The biggest lesson I learned with heartbreak was not everybody that comes into your life is there to stay.
Mm,
I think that people come and go in your life in all shapes and forms, as in friends, girlfriends, or boyfriends, or whatever. And they come into your life to maybe a person comes into your life just for the straight up reason to teach you a lesson. And you might not realize it right away, but over time you do. Others come for a season, and others come and to stay for the rest of your life.
mm,
And I am grateful that I have a lot of, not a lot, but I have a handful of friends that came into my life and are stay, and hopefully I hope that they stay for the rest of my life. But
mm,
so far, I haven't really found the partner that I want to share my life with. I'm out
mm.
there. I'm not afraid of meeting someone or getting my heart broken. That's not the reason as to why I avoid relationships at the moment. It's just I feel like as of right now, it's a bit of a waste of time,
Yeah.
especially for a person that is trying to pursue their dreams and has the ambition to work on themselves. I'm talking about myself, but I know that there are a lot of people that might relate to this as well. And like you said, things come with time. So maybe at some point someone will walk in and I'll be like, wow, you know?
Yeah.
So it's something that like I feel like it's painful when it happens, but over
Hmm.
time when you get over it, it or even when you're trying to get over it, you learn valuable lessons. So I say that would be my most valuable one. And then the second most valuable, I would say be careful on who you put your trust in
Hmm.
because sometimes you may share things with the wrong person and they weaponize that against you. You know. So yeah, but there's a lot of lessons. Feel free to comment
Yeah.
or
I think
share with
this.
us.
I think the seasonal thing was something I definitely agree with. And through experience, right, you realize that though, like, I think when you're young and inexperienced, you think somebody leaving your life is always a bad thing. Like it's always like, oh, they left my life. Like, oh, that's terrible. Now, I think when you grow and you experience things, you realize maybe somebody leaving your life is a good thing. I'm not saying them necessarily just the act of them leaving. I'm saying them coming in your life and going out has a purpose.
Yeah.
And don't ruin the purpose by getting caught on. Because maybe that person came is meant to come in for your life for a month, right? If you hold on to that, maybe it turns into something negative instead of something positive, right? I think that's really important. And about the idea of you being ready, right, for somebody who might come in your life tomorrow. Maybe you bump into somebody random tomorrow, right? And all you're saying now, goes out the window and you start dating, right? Who knows? Maybe that happens. But about that, right? What you're doing is good because you're preparing for that time. You have to be prepared. You never know, right? When somebody
Yeah.
comes in your life, and you have to be prepared for that. You can't just be like, oh, now's the time I'm going to start dating. Like this month, I'm going to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, right? Like it doesn't work like that,
Yeah,
right?
that's fair. Yeah, I agree with you. Now, this brings me to a question that I want to ask you. We've covered a lot of topics and we've talked a lot about
Okay.
heartbreak, relationships, and things like that. But I want to ask you, what is your personal opinion or view when it comes to romance and love?
Okay. Um. Well, look at it, right? I think there's different types of love, and you experience them throughout different phases in your life, right? There's like we said, the infatuation kind of love. It's very like, yeah, very useful, very immature, and not really true love, right? Then there's like, desperation love, right?
Yeah.
which is like, you're with somebody because you need them or whatever, and you don't truly love them. You just need them in your life and you don't want to lose them, right? Then there's what I would call more or less what love is to me, which is it's not just a feeling, right? Of course, it's obviously a feeling that you have, right? Naturally, right? But it's also something you can build, which is I think the interesting part of love is I think it's something that can be built. You can love somebody more over time.
Yeah.
Um, like from and I kind of relate it to in a sense with your family, right? Like, why do you love your siblings? Or maybe you don't, but not you. I'm saying maybe somebody in the audience does
Yeah.
love it, but generally you love your siblings or your parents, right? Well, like, how is that considered love? Well, it's something you build over time, right? It's years and years of them being there for you, you being there for them, of somebody being special to you, right? Spending birthdays with you, being
Yeah.
sweet to you, taking care of you when you're sick,
Making
all this.
memories.
Exactly. Memories are essential for that, right? You can't, if you forget somebody, you can't love them, right? So,
Big
so
facts. Big facts.
great movie, thesis. You forget your lover and whatever, it's such a common thing. But anyways, I think, that's what it is. Something you can build over time with your partner. And it gets stronger
Yeah.
as your relationship continues to grow. And I think that's more or less mine, more or less. What about
That's
you?
good. My view on romance and love is something that it's hard to learn about nowadays because there's kind of a hookup culture
Mhm.
where people just party and hook up and don't want anything meaningful. But from experience, I would say that love is probably the best feeling you can feel
Mhm.
when you love someone and someone loves you. There's nothing better than that, to be honest. And unless you're scoring a 90-minute winner. But other than that, there's no better feeling. But love is like it's a mountain. It's something that you gotta climb and you grow every day. And sometimes you fall. Sometimes it's a difficult feeling to handle as well sometimes.
Mhm.
And romance is mostly in movies. Mostly in movies, I would say.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about real life romance, it's rare to find, and it's rare for somebody to be romantic nowadays. From my perspective, I
Yeah.
feel like it's rare because, like I said, I feel like people would rather just hook up than to put their emotions on the line and put their heart on the line. But
Mhm.
if someone is lucky to find a person that they want to go into a relationship with, I feel like that being romantic is important, and that romance is important to keep that spark alive, that to keep the love growing. Take going out on a date or seeing a movie or going out to the park to talk or going to an arcade and playing games together and making dumb memories. So yeah, that's my view in romance and love. I know it's like a different take. It's more of a I don't know how to explain it,
Mhm.
but yeah.
For sure.
And I
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a little bit of a touchy subject nowadays. People don't like to say the word, they're like, love is a, a very strong word, right?
Yeah, people
Um,
don't like talking about it for sure. I agree with you.
yeah, they're like, what, love? Like, that's kind of weird. That's in the movies, right? It's like, yeah, it's that kind of cheesy love, yeah, it's not in the movies for
Yeah.
sure. Um, so yeah, but do you think people can fall out of love? What do you think?
100%. 100%. No doubt. I feel like sometimes you fall in love with someone and you spend a few years with them, but over time you start realizing that you guys are not meant for each other and you start falling out of love. And it's completely normal.
Mm,
A lot of people go through that. And it's okay. It's something that is not normalized, but it should be because sometimes you're not meant to be with that person. Sometimes you're just meant to be with that person for that amount of time, experience those things, and then you both part ways or you both fall out of love and meet somebody else that you fall in love with. it's something that I completely believe in. How about you?
I think for me is what you said, right? I think it's normalized, like you said, in society, but I don't think it's a good thing because I think there is a fault in the sense that people think relationships are only built on love. Like once the love is gone, there's no relationship, and it's like, hold up, that's what you think today, but that's not the way relationships really work. I think if you
Yeah.
ask people who've really made it through life, like you meet an 80-year-old couple who's lived together, you think they're like as strongly as in love as when they were 25? Like no, right? It's
Of
not
course not.
necessarily built on that, right? And I feel like if you say you love somebody, you break up with them, then you go find somebody else, you love them again. I would personally, I would question whether you really love that person like truly deeply. Like you could, like maybe you loved them, but like it was kind of like, because
It was
I
not
feel like
like serious love, I would say.
yeah, I feel like if you really love somebody, even when you lose a little bit of the love, which is natural, like you spend 40 years with somebody, like you're gonna be tired of them. It's natural, right? But you continue the relationship saying, because I love you so much, even when I stop feeling it, I still stay with you and still make a good partner and still build a relationship.
But that comes to whether they see themselves with that person for the rest of their life or not, you know? And I don't think that applies to everybody. Like I said,
Mm.
if two people fall out of love, not, well, maybe they're going through a rough patch and like kind of fall out of love in that rough patch, and then they sit down and realize, yeah, I don't think that this is something we can get out of. I don't see myself with you for the rest of my life. Then yeah, I believe that happens. But I feel like there are people that fall out of love like temporarily, but they can't live without each other. You know, they have imagined the rest of their lives with each other by each other's side.
Mm.
So they might have fallen out of love temporarily, but I feel like at some point that love comes back again. You
Yeah.
know, and that loyalty. It comes down to loyalty as well and other factors, but it's just who you want to be with, to be honest, man. Like,
Yeah, loyalty and commitment, right? The word there in this situation would be commitment.
now that we mentioned this, I gotta ask. For you, what would you say are your most important like characteristics or traits in a relationship?
Well, we said two of them. I think those two are probably the fundamental building blocks of a successful relationship, right? Is commitment and loyalty, right? Um, Other things on top of that, could be things like communication, you know,
Yeah.
honesty, um, forgiveness. I would say forgiveness. I don't know if a lot of people would have that in their top five, but I definitely have that on my top five. That's how you get through all those years together,
Yeah.
right? Even though people say hurtful things and even though people make mistakes and maybe have flaws, right? You kind of have to forgive them if you want things to work over in the long term.
Yeah. I agree with you.
What about you?
Well, you mentioned a few of mine, but to add on, I would say uh, a friendship between the two is important
Mm-hmm.
because if you love each other, you have that friendship where you guys, can joke about anything, can talk about anything with each other.
Yeah.
Um, I agree with the fact that you said forgiveness. People, it's really underrated because in order to have a successful relationship, you need to be able to forgive your partner. Little things, big things, you need to be able to. And man, it's difficult because there's so many good characteristics and bad to be thinking about them all right now. But let me see if I can come up with a few more. You
Good
mentioned
or
about.
bad? Are you saying good or bad?
I'm saying good. I'm saying good.
Okay.
I'm good. Good
Um,
characteristics. Oh wow, this is deep thinking.
I mean, those are the big fundamental blocks, right? And then the small things like I don't
Yeah,
know, being sweet to your partner, or like you said before,
caring, being
you're
caring.
romantic also too, right? It's important.
Yeah,
Those are the smaller, the ones that keep the relationship also going in some sense. What
you're the
else?
one in a relationship, man. You should know this.
Bro, I know. I know it. Talking, right? Making time for each other, things like
Yeah,
that.
prioritizing each other. I would put it that way.
Prioritizing. Yeah, that's a good
Um,
word.
trust,
Uh,
trust. trust. We forgot to mention trust.
I said
Trust.
honesty, but I don't think we said trust. Okay.
Yeah, trust. Trust is probably one of the most important ones as well, because
Mm-hmm.
you gotta trust your partner. I don't think there's a point being in a relationship with a partner that if you don't trust them, like if you don't trust your partner to go out with their friends and not do anything bad, then Jesus, like get out of that relationship.
Yeah, but trust comes because of all those other things, right? It comes because of
Yeah,
what it comes because of
something
communication,
that is built.
honesty, all those things, right? Yeah. So
I would say trust is really hard to build and really easy to break.
yeah.
It takes a lot of actions to build trust. It takes one action to destroy trust. It's
Hmm.
mental.
Yeah.
It's like a weird characteristic. It works. It's so opposite. To have to trust someone, you need so many actions for them to prove to you that you can trust them. But then if they do something that goes against that, stop trusting them. So it's like for all of this that you do, imagine my hands filled with something. For all of this that you do, just one little thing can destroy everything.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
for sure. And it's a choice too, right? Like, let's
Yeah,
say you don't see all the small actions of your partner building trust, right? You just have to choose it and say, I choose to trust you, right? Somebody tells you something, technically speaking, unconsciously, you're choosing to trust them. Sure,
that's
that
true.
choice comes from past experience, like knowing the person who never lied to you or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's a choice, right?
I agree with you. It's mostly about choices. But
And
now we've covered a lot of things about relationships, don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
Um, it's normal that relationships end, and for various reasons. And also, this podcast episode has to end. So that will be it for today.
As much as we enjoy doing this podcast and doing episodes, we don't want to keep you guys watching it too long so you guys don't get bored. So I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in for our fifth episode. Stay tuned for our sixth episode because hopefully we will bring a guest for the sixth episode.
We keep saying we'll bring a guest, but we're bringing in a guest.
I swear to you guys, whoever watches this and listens to us, we will bring in a guest next episode. Even if it's the last thing we do, we will bring in a guest.
Yeah. Trust us. Make sure to trust us on this. It's a
Yes.
choice.
So thank you so much for tuning in. I enjoyed making this episode, to be honest. I think it's probably one of our best ones.
Yeah.
And thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you. And see you next week.